Hi, everyone. My name is Liz Munoz-Huber. I take the pronoun she, her, and I'm the Senior Producer of Visual Storytelling here at the National Audubon Society. Today, we're coming to you live from the 2025 Audubon Leadership Conference, and I'm so excited to be speaking with Stephanie Thorassie of the Seal River Watershed Alliance and Lawrence Martin of the Mushkegowuk Council. Thank you so much for being here today. And Stephanie, would you mind introducing yourself to everyone?
Yeah, thank you, Masicho. Stephanie Thorassie, Wershed, Dennis Hisley. My name is Stephanie Thorassie. I'm from Tuduli Lake, Manitoba, and I am the Executive Director of the Seal River Watershed Alliance.
Awesome. And then Lawrence, would you mind introducing yourself to us?
Okay, my name is Lawrence Martin. I'm from Moose Factory, Ontario. I currently work as the Director of Lands and Resources, taking the lead for the NMCA National Marine Conservation work in James Bay and Hudson Bay, and also the terrestrial conservation plans on the land itself.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here talking with you. Let's dive into some questions, and regardless of where you're tuning in, please let us know what you want to know, and we can see if we can try to fit some of them in. Awesome. Lawrence, would you mind talking to me about the Hudson Bay Lowlands? Where is it at? What does it look like? And what does it sound like?
The Hudson Bay Lowlands is a huge area. When you look at the map of Canada, zoom into the middle part of Canada of the map, and it's a series of peatlands that are interconnected between Quebec throughout northern Ontario into Manitoba, right into the territories. So it's a huge carbon area that we have here in North America. It's actually the second largest carbon sink in the world. So that's how we see it as, and we call it the breathing lands in our language, because of what that carbon does. It sequesters the carbon from the air and it stores it for thousands of years. It's now at the stage where it gives us this breathing ability to use this air that you and I are breathing.
Yeah.
It's part of what's being produced from there. So we see it as that. We also see it as an area that is a host of millions and millions of migratory birds that come flying from the south every spring. And they stay there all summer long, breeding and nesting and feeding. And then by the time they leave in August or so, there's like 2 to 3 billion of them that fly south. That's a huge number of birds. And so it's a very special area to us because of the ecosystem that's there. And the mammals that are there. There's like huge number of mammals, like the polar bears. There are a huge number of polar bears, the belugas, the walruses, and thousands of caribou, and so on. And the moose, of course, the beaver, all of those, the black bear. They're all part of that ecosystem. So it's a very lively place, and we also have about over 200 trillion mosquitoes. So that's the exciting part, just trying to keep away from those guys.
Yeah. No, everything ends up working together though, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah, they're a needed part of the ecosystem.
Yeah. Stephanie, would you mind describing and setting the scene of where the Seal River Watershed is?
Absolutely. So you go north from where Lawrence is working and living to protect, and you go west a little bit on the western side of the Hudson's Bay, inland, at the top of the province of Manitoba, is the Seal River Watershed. It is 50,000 square kilometers of untouched, no roads, pristine lands, with zero industry. We have A lot of the same type of biodiversity as Lawrence was mentioning. We are really, really lucky though in the area that it is very remote, and because of that, it's still in its pristine state. Our biggest threat right now is climate change and forest fires, really. So for us, the nature that is there, we have a really unique opportunity to protect nature as nature is. And there's not a lot of places in the world anymore that exist like this. You can go out and drive a snowmobile for days and not see a power line or a person. You can stop and hear the peace and the quiet of the wind blowing through the trees, and you can hear the sounds of the birds so clearly, and the mosquitoes, the black flies.
Yeah, I mean, they have a nice trill, right? Like when you hear it all together, it really makes you feel in a certain space. Lawrence, could you tell us about your involvement with the Mushkegowuk Council and its history and its goals?
My involvement has been, I guess, over since 1998. I first became the Grand Chief of Mushkegowuk Council, where we had votes that were afforded to every individual member of all the 7 communities. And that was the first time that ever happened. So we were elected by the people and not appointed by the chief, so to speak. And it caused a bit of, a change that had to be made in terms of our relationships and so on. But it also allowed us to speak louder for our people, directly for the people. And in the 7 communities that are part of Mushkegowuk, they formed back in 1984. And in 1989, they developed this resolution that called for the establishment of a tribal conservation authority, is I believe what they called it. And that's what we've been following since 1989. And over the years, the last 30 years of that, we haven't been able to activate that resolution until 2020, when we started getting involved with what Canada's targets were, 25% by 2025 and 30 by 2030 and so on. That's when we opted in, and that's when we officially began a feasibility study to look at, the NMCA as being a possible tool to look at protecting James Bay and Hudson Bay. So basically that's where we began technically and legally to be able to do that. And now with the NMCA, we're still at the establishment negotiation stage. We're very close to finishing it up. And there's been a lot of support, a lot of everything that we know that we have gathered from the elders, from the land users and so on. It's all gathered into this database that we created. And it's huge, and it has all of the audio, video, and text recordings that we've done. And we use that information as curriculum material for the schools. And we also incorporated the arts community of our nations to be the messengers of conservation for the work that we're doing. It's called manipeg.ca. And it's a consortium of over 130 artists that are now creating all these beautiful images of what we have on our land. So it's really promoted, I guess, the land itself. And then we have these young people that are into technology, like podcasting, live streams, and using a lot of drones in their filming out in James Bay and Hudson Bay, and filming live right there on the spot, of the polar bears walking and chasing them down the sandy beaches. So it's quite exciting. It just excites everybody that becoming aware of what's in our backyard. What's been missing from us has been the ability to go out there because of the lack of jobs and lack of money and so forth. But now as this conservation project starts to produce jobs and guardians and other work, it's creating that opportunity for people to be out there and them sharing that story to the medium, to different mediums, and therefore people are becoming more aware.
Yeah, and I love that it involves so much collaboration, so much coordination, working together. You're building something for such a long time, especially when you're thinking about all the pure, how much knowledge you're trying to put together. It's so impressive, and it's really exciting to get to speak to you and hear more about this.
Yeah, there is a lot of change, but there's change that we also have to ensure happens.
Yeah.
There's a lot of legislation that hasn't been changed for a long time that's restricted things, and even policies, and working together with NGOs and different partners like Audubon to come in and do the science work on the migratory birds and so forth. And yes, using that information and traditional knowledge together, we bring that together in our studies, and everybody seems to be happy so far.
Yeah. And that's like somewhat of or maybe Stephanie, obviously you'll be able to tell us more about this. Can you talk about the Seal River Watershed Alliance and like how it came together and like what communities are a part of that? Because that's also a coordinated community effort.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So the Seal River Watershed Alliance is a group of 4 nations that work together to do this work, to be advocates for the land, the water, the birds, the animals. It is Tuduli Lake, Saisydena First Nation, Lac Brochet, so Northlands, Denisuchlina First Nation, Opipinuk Piyuan Cree Nation, that's South Indian, and Barrenlands First Nation, which is Brochet. So only one community is in the actual map of the watershed, and that's the community that I come from. And the other 3 are on the outside of the map of the watershed. This project started really, the reasons for it getting off the ground was because we knew we needed to try to find a way to be advocates for the land and the water and the nature. We knew we needed to share a voice for protecting the land and the animals. There are too many situations where our laws as Indigenous people were not being followed with regards to how the land was being treated and the animals. And we knew that as the world is changing, people were going to start looking north to northern Manitoba. We knew that there would be interest in minerals eventually in the province, and we knew that we needed to be proactive, and we knew we needed to do this in a way that Crown governments took seriously. And so for that reason, we incorporated and we officially became a nonprofit organization that is doing this work together with our nations, with our leadership, with our advisory group. It's really, the vision has always been about the future generations and their future generations and their future generations. It's about having a space for them to be themselves and to be authentic and to have access to clean water and to have access to feeding ourselves. It's really important that we have access to being ourselves and practicing our cultures no matter what's happening in the world.
And you brought up, both of these, initiatives are so forward thinking, trying to think not just in the short term, but in the long term. Can you both describe to me what your vision, what your organization's vision is for the future? I'm not sure if Lawrence, you want to start, Stephanie.
Go ahead.
Well, for the NMCA is to have it fully established and designated as a legal recognized area that's protected by federal law. The NMCA Act is a federal jurisdiction act, and it's law that's not easily broken. We looked at, and we're still working at, an IPCA model with one of our communities, and they've been at it for like over 20 years now, trying to protect our watershed. And Ontario and Canada are not recognizing that self-declared protected area by the First Nation. They're still selling mining claims in the territory that the First Nation has self-protected. So we wanted to make sure we use a tool that is federal law to do that. Maybe eventually that's where Stephanie's project will get to as well. And I think that's one of the things we need to look into the future at. How do we create laws that would be recognizing and enhancing the IPCA models? Because if they're not recognized, it's like the treaties of today. Treaty 9 is 120 years old, just like Audubon is. It was signed in 1905. But there's a taken up clause within it that allows the government and industry to just do whatever they want with the land no care at all about the rights that we have or the land that we're trying to protect, from the burial grounds that we have, from the calving grounds of the caribou and the fish and all of that. They can still come in and do what they wish because of that treaty little section that says that they can. So there has to be changes in the laws itself across the country.
Yeah, something very durable.
Yeah. For the Seal River, our vision is for it to be protected in the future. We are working right now. We've completed our feasibility study with Parks Canada, the federal government, and the Manitoba government. We're working in negotiations right now to determine what type of mechanisms we would like to use to create this protected space. We're really thinking of a mosaic approach, looking at what the community members see might be the best fit for our area, utilizing possible provincial park tools and or national park tools. There hasn't been a decision on designations just yet, and that's some of the work that we're doing right now. We just completed a tour of 3 out of the 4 communities to do some mapping work and completing surveys about those designations, possible designations, and working with people, visitors. What does that look like? How does that how do the community members want to interact, and making sure that it's done in respectful ways. That's really, really important. That's a part of being Indigenous-led, is that it's the community members that are driving this work and making sure that the information is happening according to the laws of our people. And so we are currently just right in this phase right now for our establishment agreement that we're working on. We haven't quite decided the designations, but in the end, what we're looking at is creating an IPCA first and utilizing the laws and the values of the 4 nations that are there, and looking to see what is the best way to partner with Crown governments to do this work and make sure that this is something that is there forever to come.
Yeah, and it's, the idea of it being whatever model you land on, want it to be useful for the people using the land there, and like making it tailored to that.
Absolutely, making sure we're highlighting the communities. We're always, in the past, we've always been last to the table. We've always been last to have these conversations, if we were even included. What's so beautiful about this time is that we're the ones leading the conversations, and we're the ones making the decisions about what we think needs to happen in our own backyards, which is really a strange place for a lot of our elders because they've never been to those kinds of conversations before. And but we haven't been doing this just thinking of ourselves. We've been doing this as we know that there aren't many places anymore that have nature as it is, and we know that we need to really do our part to help save this for people from around the world. The birds need a place to come and nest. We know that the 240,000 caribou that still migrate through the watershed need to come through in the wintertime every year. They still come very close to our communities. We want to make sure that these things continue to happen into the future, and we still have a beautiful place like this that exists in the world for us to celebrate.
Yeah, and it's, all of this work that you all are doing and that we're trying to do with Audubon is connected. If we're not protecting the birds and the other migratory species because they don't know borders, they have their own rhythms that we have to protect and follow. I know that Lawrence, you had just mentioned that the effort to establish the Western James Bay and southwestern Hudson Bay as a national marine protected area reached a significant milestone with the feasibility study. Can you tell us what's happening now after that feasibility study has happened, and what challenges you're still working through?
Even though we say, and it's claimed to be Indigenous-led, and when we bring our points across to the government during negotiations, when we say, okay, we understand that the federal government has jurisdiction only on the waters and Ontario has jurisdiction on the land, but in terms of where the birds nest, they don't nest on the water. They nest on the land, on the shores. So we need to include the shorelines in that NMCA for that purpose, and same as some of the animals like the polar bears and whatnot. So when the provinces and Canada's laws are clashing, it puts us in a stalemate that we can't negotiate without those guys getting along and agreeing. So it becomes a tripartite scenario. And Ontario and Canada haven't been getting along during this whole time we've been talking about conservation. And so our conservation work is being delayed by months and even years now, to the point where the threats are there that are becoming quite real as far as the funding that was promised as part of the process. Those funds could be taken away now with the new situations on hand, with the U.S. coming in here with their demands, and Canada with its C5 laws, and Ontario with its Bill 5 laws to fast track all of the resource development projects, which threatens our conservation plans altogether. So by having different laws in different provinces and then having to work together to make it all happen, when they're not, that's the problem. And our communities are scared because there's a chance that we thought existed to protect the land, from all this industry. Not that we were saying no to industry, we wanted to say to them, yes, we can allow resource development, but it has to be us being included and on our terms, so that we can mitigate plans within it, and that way we're able to protect the land and the resources properly over time and so on. And that ask has been denied as well. So those are the threats to it. But we're optimistic, and we always have been pushing hard all the time, and we keep lobbying. Even being here today in this Audubon conference in Montreal, we were able to nab one of the ministers that was speaking yesterday, and and tickle her a little bit to try and get movement on how those funds could still be allocated to our project.
Yeah, I mean, so much of this work takes years and years and decades, and it's an incredibly long and sometimes slow fight. I know we were talking about that yesterday. The bureaucracy of it all can be nearly impenetrable. What keeps you both, what drives you both to do this work, and what keeps you going throughout all those challenges?
We're both crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That?
For me, I have a 7-month-old son. That's a very real reason why that drives me to do this work, as well as my daughter. My community and my nation specifically was relocated from our homes, and we moved ourselves back to the land. And the real lived experience of being a nation disconnected from the lands is a very difficult thing for a community to live through. And we never want to have this happen to us again. The social problems in my community and the trauma that still exists and the healing that needs to happen as a result of the relocation of my nation is a really big driving force. I know we need those healthy lands and the healthy waters. The land is medicine, and if we don't protect that land and have healthy medicine to help heal our people are not in good shape. And so it's really about making sure that we exist in the future, and making sure that our nations can continue to thrive out on the land and be themselves. And it's always bigger than just one person and what that one person wants, the greater good of what is the project. And for us, and for me specifically, the greater good is just continuing to move forward one step after another, one foot in front of the other, no matter what's going, and just keep pushing and, keep fighting and keep kind of repeating ourselves over and over. It gets exhausting sometimes, but at the end of the day, when you can go back to the watershed and you can take a cup of water and drink the water from the watershed just as it is without a filter, you know that you are doing the right thing, and you look around and you see that it is paradise. And why wouldn't you do this work?
Yeah. Points for you.
Sometimes it's hard to figure out exactly why we're doing what we're doing, but we know darn well that we're doing this for the planet, right? For the planet's sake. When they talk about the breathing lands, the carbon, and that has to stay intact. And if we disturb it to the point where it starts emitting carbon back into the air, then we're all causing more trouble to ourselves, to everywhere. And we disturb any part of the ecosystem of the flyways of the birds and any still relying on the food that
Yeah.
comes walking across
Yeah.
the swamps or come flying across, from the US and other places. So it's part of us. We're
Yeah.
part of the earth. That we have a responsibility to protect that, to ensure that future generations are able to enjoy it as well.
Across the hemisphere, and I know they're going to hear your stories and they're going to want to know how they can help. Is there anything that they can do to support your initiatives? What is something you want to tell directly to them that they can do?
For me, it's to work together, it's to listen to each other like this, have these chats, have these conferences, and to be able to working together. Like, one of our members from Pewanak, Sam Hunter, decided last year to follow the red knot as it flew from James Bay. And he went all the way down to Argentina to do that. And that bird flew the kilometers with him. But he eventually got to Argentina weeks later. But what he found also is the flight route of that bird, where it needs to rest and feed in North Carolina. Now that area has been taken over by industry. Now it has no feeding ground. And now when you look at the numbers of the red knots in existence today, they have dropped about 70% in the last 20 years. 70%. So there's a lot of birds that are becoming extinct, and other mammals as well, because of human activity. So the humans need
People can come to our website, sealriverwatershed.ca. We have a lot of materials on there. We have our documentary is on YouTube. It's called We Are Made from the Land. And we also have a letter writing campaign on our website. Every that fills out one of our letter writing campaigns, we print off a letter and we drop it off at the Manitoba Premier's office. And these are letters of support reminding them that this work is important, not only for us as community members, but as Manitobans, as Canadians, as concerned people from the world. It's really important that we continue to remind them that this is really necessary work that has to happen. These are some really immediate things that can be done. And, we're always looking for partners. We're always looking for ways to continue to do this work. And we are looking for individuals to help with capacity building. That's a really important part of the work as well.
Yeah, so much of it is happening, on the ground. People talking to one another, trying to instill that thought of, all of this is connected. What's happening in your backyard impacts what's happening to me and where I'm from. I'm originally from Southern California, but, there are so many birds and other creatures like monarchs. I think of the monarch migration, and it's so interesting to think about how someone up potentially in Canada or even Washington sees these monarchs, and then I get to see them too all the way down in Southern California. And it's thinking about like the red knot that can connect someone all the way from the Hudson Bay all the way to the southern tip of Chile. Like it's thinking about those connections and trying to think beyond, what's in your immediate vicinity, how you can help each other is something that I think, at least for me, birds and like other creatures inspire me to do. And hopefully people can follow along with their specific initiatives. We'll drop as comments how like links to your social profiles and also to the documentary and your website, just to make sure people are able to, hear this and hopefully continue to follow along. So it's not just like a one-off thing, right? But something that's a continued relationship that like, continues to build. Is there anything else you want to tell our audiences while we have?
No, I hope they record this and then they just keep repeating it.
Yeah. Play it on a loop.
Yeah.
For me, I think I wanted to give a shout out to OPCN right now, Opepinupiwin Cree Nation. Their community is, there's a forest fire not far from the community right now. So they're one of the communities in the Alliance, and there is no power in the one community because the fire has burnt the power lines and the power poles. So it's crossed the road, and they won't get power to their community until the first week of August. So I'm thinking about them as we do this work, and thinking about that nation there, struggling with generators and trying to like figure out how they keep their freezers frozen, and their food. For us, climate change is a really huge thing that we battle in the north. Our permafrost is melting, and what used to be frozen ground and water in the ground is now dry. And so these fires that used to be smaller, more contained fires that would go through are now becoming these huge, fast, blazing fires that just tear through the north. That huge chunks of land are burnt. And just reminding people, that it is a real thing that we actually witness with our eyes. The climate change is not just something that we have theories about that is going to happen. This is what we're facing today in our communities, is these real changes. These new birds are actually coming into the watershed that have never been there before, and we're going like, what is this bird? Like it's pretty wild, the things that are changing out there now. And so my heart goes out to OPCN as they are struggling right now in trying to make sense of how to keep things moving in the community without the use of power.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a reminder that this work is more urgent than ever, and that the consequences of it are now. It's not sometime in the future. We're battling for the land we have now.
It's so real, especially in Manitoba. The amount of fires that have been burning in our province is really, really alarming and scary. And the smoke that we're breathing in every single day is not good for our bodies. That's why we have to have these lungs of the planet. The carbon that is burnt up by these forest fires is then going back into the atmosphere, then causing even more climate change. We have to work on these let it burn policies. We have to have more forest fighters trained. We have to increase their salary and their compensation for doing this work to help protect. We need to do more cultural burns to help keep the fires a way to control and help mitigate. So I think about the fires that are happening, and I think about the community right now.
Yeah, and it's all interconnected. Lawrence, did you have something you wanted to say? Sorry.
No, just thank you all for having us talk about what we do as part of our work, as part of our life, and the opportunity to be here this week as well to meet everybody else. I met some people that are also looking to spend their money and to help this cause that we're working on, so I'm grateful that they were here as well. So having a conference like this brings everybody together and everybody talks. And today we had a circle, and that really helped a lot of people speak up, what they felt. And just by everybody speaking in that circle today, to me, I learned a lot right across the country. There was a guy from Newfoundland that was speaking about his First Nation. There's only one First Nation in Newfoundland. And in history in school, has taught us that all First Nations were killed off in Newfoundland. But there's one First Nation, and it's growing slowly. They're up to about 1,000 people now, population-wise. So learning about that, and they're also doing the same kind of work we're talking about here. So it's happening in Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, territories, Quebec, everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's wonderful.
Yeah, I think that's probably has been one of the most inspiring parts of like being a part of this conference, is hearing people's direct stories about the work that they're doing, because you hear a lot of lofty goals, but to speak to people who are like actually doing boots on the ground, what's actually going to work for them, what's going to work all these different places, and like the way those approaches differ but also like overlap. It's been so inspiring, and especially about like the resilience. There's so many challenges we're facing, and climate change is not getting any better, but seeing all these people excited to continue to do this work despite all of that has been like such a privilege for me to get to experience. And thank you both for being here today and to talk to our digital audiences. We may be here in Montreal, but hopefully we're reaching people like throughout North America, but also throughout Central and South America too. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Masicho. It's so inspiring, to hear and talk to all the people that are doing this work with the Audubon Society. It's really, really, it's a beautiful thing to help make our planet a little bit smaller and to make us much more connected. Is the birds that are doing it. It's the birds that are connecting us and bringing us closer together. And it makes so much sense. It seems so straightforward to think like, why aren't we doing this in the southern hemisphere as well as the northern hemisphere? Why are we only focusing on one area when the flight plan is so vast and so large, and there are other areas where the birds need help as well? And so what are ways we can work together and collaborate and partner, and how can we learn from each other, and how can we do these exchange programs to like really improve the work that we're doing so that it's not just happening on one part of the flight path, right?
Yeah.
And the plan. So I do feel so inspired and really excited to come to these Audubon conferences. And I always leave with more birding knowledge than I came with, and I always leave, I think, with more friends. And it always feels like you see family again. You're like so excited to see some of these people that have been really important parts of our project. And so really, really grateful to be here as well.
Awesome. Thank you both. We'll drop in the comments below where you can keep up with both of your initiatives, to tune into our later tour dates for our bird migration celebration, because we'll also be following the birds. We're starting here in Montreal, and then we'll be going to a couple of stops in the United States, and then we'll end like the birds with celebration in Cali, Colombia, which I'm really excited about. So to tune in for those tour dates, please head to audubon.org/bird migration celebration. Thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.